haere mai ki tini hui. Ia mihi nui kia koutou mō te haere ngā mai kia toko te ko papa o tini hui. Nori rā tēnā koutou katoa. So if we could open with our karakia, please. Kia ronga. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Kia ronga, kia raro, kia roto, kia waho, reri hau pai Marianne. Call for any apologies.
Just Aarun Langton for lateness, just still trying to get him connected.
Okay, cool. Right, somebody move that apology. Yeah, I'm Andy Whitehead, board chair, so it's called for apologies. Somebody like to move that apology, please?
I think, there you go.
Liz.
Somebody move it down here and you answer there. So.
Liz just did, Andy.
I'm struggling with sound a little bit.
Yeah, she was muted. We'll get there. All right.
Cool. All those in favour, please say aye.
Yeah.
Sorry, through the chair, if we could just get people to unmute and say their name when you're calling for or against, it just makes it easier or better for us to minute that in the minutes and for acknowledging for the public.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. Bonita, aye.
Liz, aye.
Sharlee, aye.
Cool. That must be carried. Right, we can go with his. So everything in open forum has been moved to next meeting. Is that correct?
Through the chair, no. So there should be a presentation for the rep review update by Becky Wolland, Policy and Governance Manager. And there are 2 items for the Taranaki Coastal Community Board that we put on for discussion that are still there.
Okay, cool. Well, can we move to you then, Becky, please?
Certainly. I'll try and speak up so that everybody can hear me. So if you have trouble hearing me, please just yell at me or just put. Can you see the screen? Can everyone see the screen? I've just shared my screen with the representation review. Can you see that?
No. Oh, no, I can't, Becky.
Is that better?
Yeah. Can you see that, Andy?
No, I can't.
Not really.
No.
I'll do all the talking anyway, so we'll go through it. There's not too much on the slides, but yeah, just a bit easier to follow. So as you will know, the council adopted their initial proposal for formal consultation a couple of weeks ago, and the option that they selected was to have 13 councillors plus the mayor, which will give us 11 general ward councillors, 2 Maori ward councillors, which effectively is an additional councillor compared to our current representation at the moment. So for Maori wards, the council has adopted to have 2 Maori wards, 1 councillor per ward. East and West wards, we do need suggestions for names. So as part of the final decision on the 11th of October, we must have names for both the East and West wards. Otherwise, they will be forever called the East and West ward, which we don't necessarily want. The boundary for the Maori wards is predominantly along State Highway 3, which splits Eltham, Normanby and Te Hawara in half. The boundaries for this were discussed with Ngā Ruahine and Ngā Te Ranui, and that is the boundaries they requested. So that is the option that the council adopted. There is a map there. I'm not going to stop on that. Some of you are having trouble seeing anyway. I will send this presentation out to you afterwards, along with some other information. So for the councillors, that will give us 2 councillors for Eltham Kaponga ward, 2 for Pātea, 2 for Taranaki Coastal, and 5 for Te Hawara. Again, there's another map there, but I won't dwell on this one for today. So the board, the council also adopted to retain community boards with the same ward boundaries as those proposed for the general wards. So the big movement for Taranaki Coastal is that Okaiawa moves back to Te Hawara and comes out of Taranaki Coastal. And the boundary at the moment is for Eltham will move to Oil Road. So they're the 2 big probably changes for Taranaki Coastal. What we are going to do is we are going to consult directly with people on the borders or on the boundaries so that they know exactly which ward they'll end up in when it comes to voting day or election day. So the timeline at the moment is consultation will end on the 23rd of September with a hearing being held on the 29th and if the deliberations and final decision on the 11th of October. At the moment, the proposal that has been adopted by council is non-compliant in regards to the thresholds that the Local Electoral Act require. But the reason that they've adopted a non-compliant option is based on the feedback they received through the pre-consultation that happened and based on the updated figures that were presented by Stats NZ. There will be an objection period following the final adoption for a month, and should no objections be received, then the decision will go off to Local Government Commission for before they, so any non-complying options they have to give us the final tick for. So we're really, really wanting the board's feedback. Te Hawara provided us with some feedback during the pre-consultation. It was the only board that submitted. So we're encouraging our boards this time round to submit on the formal consultation. You can submit online through the email, and once we move to level 2, you'll be able to take hard copies to our sites or phone us on 0800 number. I'll send out all the information following this meeting so that you guys can have a look at it. And if you've got any questions or you want to have a bit more of a discussion about this at another time before the 23rd, please feel free to get in touch with me. Have we got any questions?
Yes, so from Andy, the chair, we are losing an elected councillor in this area.
That is correct.
Now, with the 2 elected Maori representatives, is there not a hope and expectation that they would have been able or been given more opportunities to engage with more people? Isn't that the idea behind it? And so why I'm asking that is by not increasing the number of councillors, are you therefore expecting the Maori wardens, the Maori elected councillors to do not only the work of the 2 councillors or the 1 councillor that's leaving, but also do that additional work?
So, and maybe this is a question that Phil may even would like to answer, and if Phil wants to jump in, just steer me in the right direction. But my understanding is the reason the council decided to move this option is for representation. So in terms of how many, to make sure that the representation is fair. And overall, I think overall the whole council, it's about between 2,500 to 2,700 people per councillor. So we are going to have the 2 additional Māori ward councillors, which will be able to pick up the additional workload. However, We're also in a space where we're in a local government reform, we're in a Three Waters reform, and it's potential that the councillors may, in the next 3 years, may not necessarily, there might not be as much, well, who knows what that's going to look like. So yeah, so yes and no. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Andy, or not really?
Yeah, it does, because it's just my concern that the idea of a Maori board and Maori elected representation is to increase engagement, and I would have thought that would be a workload in itself. There's one thing, checking on the water and checking on the rubbish and checking on the but engaging with the people is another. And with the iwi, there's a whole lot of challenges out there as to making sure we get better communication with, and better, what's the word I'm looking for, engagement before we build houses. So, those two elected representatives are going to be fairly busy, I would have thought.
Yes, so one of the things that the council talked about in depth at the meeting was that, for instance, Phil Nixon may be a councillor for the Te Hawara ward, but he's likely to have friends in Pātea or Taranaki Coastal or wherever. And for representation, yes, that's correct. However, most people will contact the person that they know the most or they have a relationship with if they've got a concern. So part of that answer is yes. The other part of that is the part of the reason to have Māori representation is to have diversity around the decision-making table as well. So yeah, there's a couple of things in there, I think.
So, which is important, but because I 100% support that representation. I was just, my personal view or my personal thoughts were that there was going to be an increased engagement process rather than decisions being made. We've got it wrong in the past, and so I was hoping this would have given us more opportunities to get it better. But yeah, no, but it sounds like the things are changing. Well, I'm happy you've answered my question, and I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
No problem.
Can I just make a comment there, Chair, if I could, on that? We did a lot of work around that with councillors. A lot of discussion was had, and one of the options that we were looking at was getting down as low as 8 councillors, which only put 1 councillor in Opunaki, Taranaki Coastal, in Eltham and in Pātea. And so the council actually felt in the end they wanted more than that, and whilst we are disappointed we are losing one of our councillors in the Taranaki Coastal area, we feel that given the rules we have to work under as to how many councillors, how many constituents each councillor represents, it has worked out pretty fair across everyone, and we actually have ended up with 1 more councillor on the council that's going to come in next year than what we currently have at the moment. Sorry, I just see too, Bonita's got her hand up.
For Aarun. Aarun had a comment.
Yeah, just a question was, because now the boundaries have changed, how many less people are in the Taranaki Coastal Ward area, and what effect does that have on our funding, like, the funds that we give out?
I would have to go back to the figures, Aarun, but what I can do is when I send out the email afterwards, I will get an answer for that question and I'll put that in the email as well. So I'll let you know if there's a drop in population. However, I'm pretty sure that there was an increase, but I don't want to say that without going back to the figures.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Kia ora team, and I should have said this before Becky started actually, but just declaring my conflict now as a local government commissioner that I won't be taking part in any further discussion relating to the representation review for South Taranaki District Council. Likewise, if the council's position comes before the commission, I won't be taking part in any of that decision making either. So just to let everyone know that I'm totally out of the loop for South Taranaki District Council in terms of this representation review. Kia ora.
So if there's no further questions, like I say, I'll send that information out to you, and feel free to contact me if you have any other questions.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Becky. Right, so now we can move on to that letter from Robin Cathy in regards to a giant surfboard and some Norfolk pines. What's people's thoughts? Like, they're both good ideas, but are they our responsibility? Do we want to drive this? What's people's thoughts?
Can I kick off perhaps with my thoughts? I do like the surfboard idea. I think that could be quite iconic for Upinaki and for the coast on Surf Highway. I think that's pretty cool. Not quite sure where that might go yet. But in terms of the Norfolk Pines, my recommendation would be to refer the offer to our parks team for them to give consideration to, because they're the ones that know about our guidelines and policies and preferences around species, etc., and environments. If the intention was for them to all be planted in Upinaki, then I think we need to have more guidance on that around suitability, etc. So I'm not sure that that decision should sit within the board's jurisdiction to take care of. That's just my thoughts.
Okay. Yep, so I feel, so that one, you're thinking we could pass it on to the parks team, and you're thinking in the wider area of our district.
Well, if it's even possible to use them, knowing that, I think the council's preference is for native plantings. So I would, perhaps like some more information to come back about all the options. But the parks team are the experts in this area, so I would think they could give the best guidance rather than us just guessing where they might go. And if it means across the district, where they might be useful across the district, then was that the intention of the offer, or was it just for our ward?
I think it's for our ward, but I was thinking like from our ward, from including Hangarau, Rahutu, wherever anybody may think that they are suited, because there was 40 of them, I think. I don't think we want 40 in one area, do we? If any at all, but that's another, 30 or more plants, self-seeded, yes, there's 30 plants. So, in regards to the surfboards, what's people's thoughts? Do we take some kind of investigation into it? Like, the first protocol would be to contact iwi and see what their thoughts are and where's a suitable place and things like that.
Liz has her hand up, Andy.
Okay, yeah, I can't see anybody. Sorry, Liz.
Just a couple of thoughts. I think Bonita's idea of asking parks for their input about planting of these trees is a good one. I do agree that if we adopt bringing them, they should be spread along our area, not just in Opunake. The big surfboard Mareikura is already there. So maybe the addition of another one could be part of the wayfinding along Surf Coast Highway as part of that signage, but I think it's already been done in Mareikura.
But we're looking at one that you can stand on and get a photo. Is that what? I don't know. Wave and a surfboard in front of it, like you were actually surfing the tube.
That's a bigger project than just a surfboard then.
And health and safety issues.
Proposed that a large model of a breaking wave complete with a surfboard, based on the design predicted by David Latin, be built and placed in Opunake. So it's like a photo thing. You know, it's a big breaking wave with a surfboard basically inside it. You stop for a photo shoot. It's 4 meters tall. That's very tall.
I did the quiz this week on stuff that's the size of the lemon and pyro bottle in pyro, 4 meters. So you're talking about a considerable sized object. Do we really want it?
Can I just through the chair, can I suggest we move this conversation forward to either I guess directing it to the officers to come back as part of the community development services report, or at the next informal, because we're not going to design it today. It's a good idea. We can investigate it further, and we can come back to a board meeting at a future point.
Pretty happy with that we still keep working with the idea, but as far as making a decision, it's going to take a long time.
Yep.
Yep, cool. Right, so we're happy to move on. Hope everybody's got their thumbs up. I can't see you, sorry. We'll move on to the Taranaki Coastal Community Board, Opunake swimming pool hours and funding for lifeguards.
Can you not see them, Andy?
I can see Liam.
I don't know. Sorry. Oh, falling off.
Fran, you might need to help with saying what's on the screen through the chair.
Just a moment. Sorry, Marianne.
No, you're on mute, Fran.
Right, you're unmuted, Andy.
Okay, cool. So we are looking at Opunake swimming pool hours and funding for lifeguards. So, is that a proposal to increase hours?
Have we had any paperwork around this?
Is Aarun?
We need some paperwork. We need a report. We need figures. We need rationale.
So, Chair, can I suggest then again, a little bit like Lem did with the last one, if the community board could work informally with the officers and get some facts around this of exactly what people want and where they want to go, and then that could then be presented back to, I guess, initially an informal and then to the board.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. So we are requesting that further information.
Yes.
Cool.
Including where the request came from.
End of open forum. We can move on to our minutes of the previous meeting. So if somebody could move that as true and accurate, and somebody second it by calling out your names, please.
Confirms?
Yeah.
Liz confirms.
Okay, cool. And then, is there any matters arising from? Oh, do we have that? Becky? I don't think we have matters arising, do we? But everybody's confirmed.
Through the chair. Vanessa speaking. The next item before items for action was the report for the local discretionary fund application, and then there was a second item of the draft property acquisition and disposal policy that need to be spoken about first.
So the local discretionary fund application one, no. Did you say the local discretionary fund application one needs to be spoken about?
Through the chair, yes, before items for action can be brought up in the agenda.
Okay, cool. Right, so if we move on to that local discretionary funding applications report, so we had no applications.
No.
Is there anything in there that do we have to accept that report?
Through the chair, yes, it needs to be
Received.
received.
Yep, I'll move receipt of the report. That's Bonita.
I'll second it, Aaron.
Liz and Sharlee have frozen.
Again.
So everybody's happy with what is, so there's not many, we haven't done many changes, have we? The board, ours is, the only one in ours is the board will not normally provide retrospective funding. Was that we added? Was that the only one block? So can I just clarify, Becky, is that, so under Taranaki Coastal A, the board will not provide retrospective funding. Is that the only, what's the word I'm looking at, criteria that we've got, or is that because the only one we've changed?
Becky's gone.
Oh, Becky's gone.
Through the chair, I think Marianne speaking here. That's the criteria that you've chosen. So this came through to boards about just over a year ago, probably. I think I just started. And yeah, that will be, so that's the specific.
I'm just looking there. So that's the one we've added for our particular area. There's still those ones that are ineligible, such as
yeah,
food
that and
councillors.
yeah, they all include that. Yeah.
That's been a long-standing criteria for Taranaki Coastal.
Yep, that's right. Cool. So did everybody say aye to that, being in favour of that report? Because the next one on the list is the draft property acquisition and proposal report. So you need to. Do we have to move that one to accept that one? Yep. Somebody would like to move that we accept that one, please.
Yeah, Aarun will, and I'll second Bonita and Aarun. Because we've lost Sharlee and Liz.
Oh no. So my understanding is that there's just possible things that it's to speed up the process of removing, so that we can get rid of or dispose of surplus property rather than leaving it to go to wreck and ruin. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Marianne speaking. Yes, I mean that's part of it. That's some things. There's a whole lot of odd pieces of property that we end up with, whether through bequests or all kinds of reasons. Sometimes it's just an odd little corner that doesn't make sense, or it's a stopped road. It can be any number of things. Reasons why we end up with a piece of property that isn't. That makes more sense to be disposed of. We don't have any use for it. And the other thing is just to make sure we've got a really clear process for acquiring property as well.
Yep.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. And so is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
What's recorded in that report?
So just through you, Andy, just for the board's information, this report came to the policy and strategy meeting a couple of weeks ago previously. And as a side issue, one of the difficulties that I'll be perhaps talking with senior leadership about is having community board reps at the policy and strategy meetings speaking to reports like this that we haven't had a chance to talk about as a community board. So that's the side issue. But just letting you know that on the day when I spoke to this report, the one thing I did ask for is that early in the report there be acknowledgement of the history of confiscation in our district and the removal of the whenua from iwi, and that there be a bit of a paragraph and a bit of history outlining the context in which this report now sits around disposal of and acquisition of property. And I also recommended that within the process outlined in the report that somewhere very early in the piece iwi are engaged with rather than at the end of a process, so that they're able to give feedback and indications of their potential interest in pieces of property that are being disposed of or acquired, to save any further angst down the track when the process is fully engaged. So those are my two things. Up front, acknowledging the history of the land, and the context in which landowners now sit, including council, now sit here in South Taranaki, and further on in the process, putting iwi, front-loading the process with iwi engagement rather than waiting for the process to have been introduced, instigated, and being further down the track. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense, because I see like impact on Maori and iwi is number 27 in the list of things, which I would argue doesn't really give it the priority that it should have.
Through the chair. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Marianne. Just highlighting that potentially I'd like to have some discussion with other community boards around being able to provide robust feedback to the policy and strategy. Phil, can we have that conversation with reports that come to community boards after we sit at that meeting as community board reps, not having had a chance to discuss it with the community boards?
Yeah, look, through you, Chair, I agree with you there, Bonita, and this particular one, we did realise at that meeting that it hadn't gone through some proper channels with iwi and or with community boards. So that's why this is coming out now before any decision was made at policy and strategy, and really happy to take that on board, that yeah, absolutely, any of these that are coming to community boards or to iwi liaison, any that are going to policy and strategy and haven't been to community boards or iwi liaison, that's just not good enough. So we'll just make sure that does happen in the future with this policy type work. Thank you.
Through the chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, we've accepted that draft report.
Andy, Marianne wants to ask a question. Go ahead, Marianne.
Thank you. It's Marianne speaking. I just wanted to check, Bonita, in diligent on page, if you go to say page 41, which is about the disposal process, in there it talks about, so it's got those first three, you know, like, something might be decommissioned or, like a wastewater thing or whatever, and then handed over to the property unit to manage the disposal. If it's required, determine if it's required for other council use, at which point we're talking to activity managers and things. If it's not required for council use, then is that when we should see how it goes on the right, not required? Is the step to consult with iwi after that, do you think?
I would agree. That would be
so that's a step in there going, ask iwi.
Yes.
What else first? Yep. Okay.
It could be quite a significant site. It could be a wāhi tapu. There could be a whole lot of things that you don't know about the property, or iwi might have aspirations and want to be, kept out of the disposal. So yeah, I think that would be a great place to have it.
Or, sorry, can I just check one more? Like if we go down one, see disposal, financial beneficial, no lever, legislative restrictions, maybe it's under those two, like above report to council, because then when we're going to iwi, we've got some information about it, like saying we want to dispose of this because it doesn't have any use for us and there's no legislative thing, or saying there's some legislative restrictions around it, it might be reserve land or something like that. So then we've got some information to give iwi. Is it better after those two bits have been found out?
Maybe just signalling, I think signalling in the first instance, signaling that this is coming up, and we will come back to you with that information so we can have further discussion. How's that?
Yeah. Okay. I'll write that down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Andy.
Right. And then we can move on to items for action.
Bye, everyone.
We haven't held a hui, have we? Well, we decided we talked about where is there one needed. So, and we're losing Okiawa anyway.
Through the chair, Fran speaking. So at our informal discussion, we managed to possibly decide something mid-November and around the Rahutu area. However, that also depends on COVID and the next few weeks to get more of a gauge. So at this point in time, it will be later than October.
Yeah, I think if we could engage with that northern area, so not necessarily as a township, but in that northern area, just be quite appropriate to get feedback and.
Yep, that's cool.
Cool.
Is Aurora in the
about the lake
area?
Lake meeting is there?
Through the chair, I'm not actually sure on that one, and I will check, Andy, but for now I'm looking at mid-November, and if that's not appropriate, it will be probably February 2022.
Okay, no That sounds perfect.
Through the chair, sorry, we didn't have a mover or a seconder for the. Sorry, ignore me. Withdrawn.
Cool. Right, so now we can go on to those reports. Those, what one on there?
Sorry, through the chair, can you just have a mover and seconder to accept the report, the items for action?
Okay. Well, I'll move that we accept that items for action report. So Andy moved that. Is there a seconder?
Yeah.
Hopefully there. All those in favour, please say aye.
Right.
Cool. Right. Now we go on to the information reports. Find them. There we are. So the first one is the Community Development Activity Report. So somebody would like to move that we receive that report, please?
I'm happy to. Liz is happy to.
Second.
Sharlee, second.
You. So is there any discussion on that report? Right. So the only one for our area is that mountain bike enthusiast, and yeah, the area that they had looked at was too wet, so we're continuing to look at other areas. That's correct.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. We're looking into other possible areas. It was too swampy.
Right, so the next report is the District Library Plus report. If somebody would like to move that, we receive that report.
Bonita move. Bonita and Aarun.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Any discussion on that report? Looking good, I guess. COVID, is anything happening at the moment?
The Wi-Fi's are turned off, aren't they?
What was that? Sorry, Liz?
I think the Wi-Fi's have been turned off because of COVID.
Yeah, through you, Chair, that's actually something that is done by the Aotearoa People's Network, Kaharoa, who actually control that through the libraries. And so just to stop people congregating outside libraries to get free Wi-Fi, that has always been turned off during lockdown. So that's the reason why that is at the moment. So yeah, it perhaps does affect a few people that rely on that connection to Wi-Fi.
Thank you. I was happy to be there on the day of a soup day, so I had some wonderful soup, and it sounds like it was very popular. They did time it to suit the knitting club or the crafting club or some club on the same day, so but it went down really well and was well received, I believe, so well done to them. All those in favour that we receive that report, please say aye.
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 Cool, and then if somebody could move that we receive the service activity report, please.
Sharlee, happy to move.
Liz is happy to second.
Cool, thank you.
Through the chair, happy to make just a few comments on those two reports. There's two reports under item 6.3. I guess the reason for that is I I guess we've got the June report for year end, and we've got the July report for, I guess, the first reporting month of the new financial year. That's why we've split it that way. I guess just a couple of really quick comments, given that this is quite a challenging Zoom meeting. The building consent numbers are down slightly. It's giving the guys a bit of time to regroup. I guess the one negative indicator in the reports is the animal statistics, and once we get out of lockdown, there's going to be a bit of a conversation amongst the compliance officers as to how we address those numbers, because we've sort of got through one reporting year into the new one, and they're still tracking upwards, particularly in some of our key indicators around dog attacks and rushing, threatening. So a little bit concerned about that. Just in the prelude to this meeting, Liz and myself were just talking that there does seem to be a feeling, and the stats sort of bear it out, is that there seems to be an increase in number of dog attacks. So we're trying to address that. That's a work in progress. Probably the good news stuff towards the end of the reports is around the environment sustainability work, and Rebecca's team is really making some good moves around looking at solutions for in the waste minimisation space, and particularly around organic waste. So that's just a real high-level summary of those two reports. Happy to take any questions.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Liam. Just a query regarding some of the notices to fix, etc., that look like they've been lingering for a year or so, with further, what's the terminology? Further something, the action to be considered. How are those progressing? Because it seems a long time now. Some of them are heading into a year.
Yeah, through the chair, some of them are progressing a little bit slowly. I guess we've just got the one monitoring officer across that range of notices to fix and dangerous building notices. So I guess we're taking a bit of a risk-based approach to them, and we try and, I guess, provide time for the client to resolve the issue. So there's a little bit of latitude shown there. But yeah, some of them are sort of starting to grow some cobwebs, so we'll be moving on to that fairly shortly.
That's cool. And do they ultimately come back to E&H for action, or what's the process? Is that triggered by staff deciding to move on them, or
yeah, through the chair? No, it's more about if we do proceed to prosecution, there's some delegation that needs to be worked through with the chief executive, but by and large we try and deal with it at officer level. But if they do escalate, it does go up the hierarchy as you've suggested.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So any further discussion on any further questions for Liam? Somebody like to move? All those in favour that we receive that report, please say aye.
Aye.
Cool. And then, so the next one, I think it's the final one, is our facility usage report. Somebody like to move that we receive that report, please?
Sorry, Chair. We've actually got two reports from Lem to move, so there was a June one and a July one to receive.
Okay. Somebody like to remove that? So we'll start again. Somebody like to move that we receive the June report, please?
Yeah. I'm happy to, Liz.
Sorry, are we able? Hold on, I just thought, are we able to wrap them? Just amend the motion to wrap them both into the same motion.
Becky, can we do that?
Vanessa.
Yep, we can.
Through the chair, that's okay. We can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Those in favour of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Carried. Cool. Right. So now we can move on to that final report. Is the facility usage report. So somebody like to move that we received that report.
Aye, Bonita and Aarun.
Well, thank you. So any discussion on those usages? When does our swimming pool open?
I'm not sure.
Okay, cool. So obviously all our recycling places are closed due to COVID. It's not stopping the people going up there and putting them in the bins that are provided for the casualty car service. So there's a large collection of rubbish being delivered in Opanaki at the moment. Sort that out after COVID.
Through the chair, we can raise it as an issue through the pandemic response team and get action around that.
Say aye.
Hang on, Andy. Sorry, Liam.
Just commenting that it's those sorts of issues, and thanks for raising that, that we can put through the pandemic response team and get some action around that.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, just on the flats, there's one of the flats that that are going to be no longer occupied, isn't there? The Opanaki flats down to 2 in there. And so they are the ones on King Street, is that correct?
Yeah, I guess through the chair again, it's probably a pity Marianne's not here, but I understand that there's a bit of renovation work happening on those King Street flats, which might be impacting the occupancy. But I think there's a view the numbers, and I could be wrong here, but the number of units are going to be retained once that work's been done. I guess our planning team's working with Karen McCulloch's team around that and some of the land suitability work. So yeah, I'd probably take those numbers with a bit of grain of salt until that work's been completed.
So can I request that we, Fran, that we have the information as to, because there's been discussion as to whether those flats are going to be done back up and retained, or are they going to be part of that disposal in the future? I mean, I'm talking in the future, maybe nobody does know at the moment, but it would be good to be able to have clear information as to whether the intention is for the council to do them up and keep them, or to maybe reduce the number of, because I had heard that they were looking at reducing those and maybe building new or something. I don't know, Phil, can you answer that one?
No, I can't, sorry, Chair. I'm not sure where that's at with those. I have just sent a message to Marianne. I'm not sure if she's available to come on and answer those questions. But if she doesn't, we'll certainly take on notice and get back to you to answer your questions.
Just to follow on from that, through the chair, it's something we can put on matters arising.
Andy.
My understanding is that, yes, so it'd be quite good to have that confirmed either way. Thank you.
Yeah,
Right.
we can put that on matters arising, Chair.
Liz,
Yeah. Can I just mention that Marianne, when she was talking to us about the disposals and acquisitions, did comment that it is the intention to do away with those flats over time and replace them, but we will not lose pensioner accommodation. They will replace them with better accommodation, but the current ones do not fit the purpose. So, oops. Sorry, I'll just hang up.
If we can get that confirmed at the next meeting, that'll be great. Right, cool, and then yeah, we will close the meeting. And then just now